I've been dragging my feet quite a bit in the past couple weeks. In fact, the only notable thing I've done is stick some fairings to my rudder cable exits. That's gonna change. I created a traditional to-do list, and I'm gonna do my darndest to knock as many things off of that as I can. Let's get started.
To be fair to myself, I've gotten it done recently. At least that's what you've seen on the channel. The cockpit is looking incredible, the tail is on the plane, and it looks like a real plane. However, for a period of a week or two off camera, I struggled to make any meaningful steps as far as progress goes. The to-do list was everything that I could think of to get done before I move to a hangar and before I hang an engine. A lot of these items have been hanging over my head and simply backburnered because of lack of interest. Here now, we power through them one by one, and I kick that list's ass.
Couple quick tips. I've found it's always easier to match drill everything when it's at a number 40. If you start making these holes too big, it gets really hard to line everything up and to get the holes centered on one another. It can be a fight, as right now I would love to be able to plug the antenna here and do some marking, but in order to do that I'd need to open up this center hole. I have my doubler lined up on the longitudinal axis of the plane. Fore to aft, I have it pushed just about as far back as I can until I start to infringe upon the space of the vertical stabilizer. Reason being, I'm gonna have a GPS antenna up forward, and I'm supposed to keep as much distance on those as possible. About that distance, I've found it's nearly impossible to adhere to all the requirements of the antennas, especially Garmin's recommendations. I'm positioning these mostly on what's been proven successful on planes before mine. In fact, most of these antennas are just slightly closer than the 3 or 4 feet that Garmin and others recommend they be apart from each other. Currently, I'm trying to dodge flanges inside of the structure. I'm gonna have to go crawl in there and make sure the space is clear before drilling any holes. I'm having a hard time finding more ways to delay. It's always terrifying putting holes in very visible locations on a relatively finished airframe. But I don't know what else to do. I've checked a few things. I'm sure, I'm positive I will figure out exactly what I did wrong as soon as I do it. probably worth noting on this guy, you want to match drill all your holes except your nut plate holes. You do not want to put the nut plate holes mistakenly on the exterior of the aircraft. I say this because the thought ran through my head and then I caught myself and was like, that would be awful. Before I go and crawl in the back of this thing and swear a lot, I'm going to go ahead and get the GPS puck ready to install too. That way I can do 2 for 1 and spend the least amount of time curled up in the back of this thing as possible. Obviously, if I'm in the back, I gotta find someone to be on the outside, so in the meantime, I'm gonna hit my phone up and seeing who I can sucker into helping me dimple some skins and hammer some rivets. I got the doubler plates riveted in with the help of a buddy. I was not able to film because we were kind of in a hurry, but it went off basically without a hitch. I say basically because there is a little dent here. Now, to be clear, that's not Chad's fault. That one's on me. I slipped with the bucking bar. Chad did his job just fine. I was the one that screwed up here, but that shouldn't surprise anyone. With the doubler plates in, I'm going to go ahead and secure the antennas, hook the antennas up. That will check off a couple things from the list here, which is exciting. Now, if I seem relatively unconcerned about the tiny little dent in the skin, that's an accurate observation. This thing is nothing, and if it does bother me, it can easily be flattened out before paint. I'm pleasantly surprised. I took a risk. I cut to the factory mold line. I've heard that biting a few people. Here, it fits nearly perfectly. I've done a little adjusting. I've had it off the plane maybe a half dozen times to make it minor adjustments. It fits wonderfully. It's a little thicker at the trailing edge. I don't know if I'm going to try to thin that out or just deal with it. Part of me says just live with it. I mean, otherwise, this thing looks great. Do I want to attach it with screws and washers? Or am I just going to rivet this guy on?
Hey, this is all a lot of hard work. Not the airplane. Well, I guess that is too, but these videos. And frequently, my reward for the hard work is your subscription. If you haven't subscribed yet, I'd really appreciate it if you'd consider it.
Who we kidding? We all know what comes next. Yes! So I've decided on this. We're going to use nut plates, screws, and Tinnerman washers. That's it. That's what I've decided. We're going to put them in. It's going to be a grand time. Then I can call this whole area done. Are we kidding? It's never done, but it is done for now, I think.
When I made that joke, I had no idea how accurate it would be, but more on that later.
Oh boy. Whoa! You're thinking, probably, or not, I don't know, probably thinking, why is he striking that off the list? Indeed, it should not be. As I indicated before, there's more to this story. I am not happy with the screws, with the buckling between the screws, and what I'm really not happy with is at the front of the rudder, I have essentially sections that are peeling away from the tail itself. Now, the only way that I could figure to get these things to attach better is to pop some rivets in there. But if I'm going to put rivets up front, why wouldn't I just rivet the whole thing? I think I chose the wrong path when I chose to go with the screws. It makes more sense now, and I think I'd be happier with the finished result if I went through and did pull rivets across the bottom of the rudder. So I will be ordering a new piece of fiberglass as well as new mounting strips, drilling out all these lower rivets, reattaching the strips, and starting from scratch. If it sounds like a lot of work, it is, but I'm really not happy with how this came out, and I can't think of any other way to fix it. So the relatively low cost and somewhat modest amount of time involved to have this be done right, I feel is worth it to me. You'll see me redo this in the future, and for now, it's going back on the list. All right, I bought some more parts. When I lose motivation in the project, I just buy shit. Gets me excited again. I bought some additional elements of the firewall forward kit, including control cables, which are an exciting thing to get put into the plane. And realistically, one of the last things I need to fully complete that avionics panel and have it looking flight ready. I only have one shot with the throttle cable mounts. These were powder coated with the avionics panel. Can't easily replace this. So I went ahead and I mocked this up out of plywood. I'm gonna hold it up in the plane, see how everything fits, see if I'm liking it, if there's any areas where I might get conflicts between this and the control stick. If I like it, we'll go ahead and get these mounted into the throttle bracket itself and get that put in the plane. I am not going to drill any holes in the firewall until I get the motor hung, or at least get it in my hands and see where these things need to pop through. I have diagrams, I have some documentation. I'm just not fully trusting of it, so we're gonna wait on any holes in the firewall. Hi, bud. And she's sniffing. There's some interaction between the knobs and the control stick, which is a bit of a bummer. And if you notice, I'm not really looking at this with the knobs fully extended, which could further the problem. However, I don't think it's going to change much on my approach. In reality, there's not much I can do as far as moving these out of the way. What it means is I likely need to slightly reduce the length of my control stick. Here's a note, and something you might want to keep in mind if you are working on your panel. It's a very common thing for folks to extend the length of their panel. This is because, as you saw, getting all your components fit on the relatively small amount of real estate offered by the stock Vans panel can be a challenge. Adding an inch or two can really free you up, but it's something you're going to pay for later when you're trying to mount these. If your sticks are stock length, it really starts to get tight between the full range movements of that control stick and your components on your panel or the panel itself. For me, I'm not too concerned about losing maybe a ½ inch of control stick height. I believe that's going to allow me plenty of clearance between the components here. I'm going to go ahead and drill my holes and look at getting this thing installed.
Ha ha ha.
Why is it back here? I know what you're thinking. Why? Why do we have it back on the table? That was a trial fit, and it Worked great, but there's things we need to do. I need labels on this. It needs a protective clear coat, and I still need to create a bracket back behind this that's going to help support these cables. That last part is going to be difficult, and it's going to put me back underneath that panel more than I would like. But before we tackle that, I'm going to go ahead and get the labels on it, get a clear coat going so that it can start to cure, and then I'll worry about what I'm going to do to support the rear end of this thing. Have the lettering on this. It's been clear coated. It's ready to rock. I have also gone ahead and fabricated an aft bracket. This is another one of those pieces. It takes some time to fabricate, especially considering I had to make some custom cutouts to make room for my harness. I originally was just going to bolt this in unprimed, but apparently I didn't have it in me, so I went ahead and shot it with white so it matched everything else. Now, I would have no problem believing that this would be able to put up with the rigors of all of the control cables. This thing is stout. However, this is merely bolted into or screwed into the bottom of the panel, which, as you remember, is a 90-degree bend in a piece of, I think, 063 aluminum. And I'm a little concerned about the leverage that these control cables might be able to exert on that flange and thus the panel. This will help alleviate that concern. This will support the weight of all the cables as they extend backward. I'm going to go ahead and get both of these pieces installed now, which unfortunately means a lot of time spent crammed backwards inside of that cockpit. Let's get to it. What an awesome piece to add to this. This is just so cool. It matches, it looks great. I couldn't be happier with how this has turned out. I don't have the holes in the firewall yet. As mentioned, I'm gonna hold off on those until I am 100% positive I'm putting them to where they need to be. I've seen a lot of different placement on those online, so we'll wait until an engine's on the front. Otherwise, this really rounds out this area. Still missing the heat knob. I accidentally ordered only one. It will look the same as this, but of course we'll adjust the heat down there. That's it for this. I'm gonna play around with this for a little bit and then it's on to the next. But the next item is coming next week. As always, I want to thank everyone so much for the comments, the thumbs up, the likes, the subscribes, everything that you do. It keeps me going. I've got a long list to go, and I'm excited to have you along for it. We'll see you next time on Ryan Flies.